Good evening, Elevating Man family. This is A.L. Johnson, and I'm here with a very special guest. We have a licensed therapist, Caleb at Goke, and we're going to be talking about reducing stigmas, eliminating barriers, and increasing access to mental health, what that looks like from his side of the ball as a clinician. And so we're going to dive deep into that. As always, our live streams are interactive, and so if you have any questions or comments, please drop those in the comment section, and we'll be sure to address them. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk about a very important topic in the world of mental health and just elevating men in general. So appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. You did an amazing job at our mental health conference. It was great. We did a group therapy session that you led, and just for the people that weren't there, can you talk a little bit about that and just kind of what that experience was like for you?
Yeah. So the the opportunity to be at that conference was something to have um, a practice of what it's like to be in group therapy. Group therapy is different in a couple of ways from regular therapy, and in that of it's an open group, so it's not one on one with the therapist where you get into the deep, heavy subjects, but it's also a low barrier of entry into therapy in that you're there with people who are typically similar in one way or another. Usually, groups would be centered around either a topic or a specific conversation. So, groups can be either open or closed and range from about 10 to 12 people. So, it was really a really cool exercise to be able to provide the service for people who may have been to therapy before or haven't been to therapy before to have an experience of what it's like to have someone be there and guide a conversation around a topic that may be difficult for you to understand. And groups can be structured in many different ways. So what our group was really a psychoeducational group, and that's what break that down. It's psychoeducation, really bringing information to the forefront for those who were in attendance about what it means to be into therapy. And so we handed out some practical skills such as like breathing exercises 478, doing some grounding exercises to help people relax in the moment, and then we talked about what it just means to go to therapy as a man, and then specifically because almost everyone that was there was a black man or a man of color. What does it mean to go to therapy as a person of color, and what has that experience been like, or what are the hurdles? And it was a cool opportunity to do that and participate in that experience.
We absolutely appreciated that, and I learned a lot. That was the first time that I saw the emotion wheel,
Hmm.
um, and that was a very eye-opening tool that you all use, and so I appreciate that. I get asked a lot, like, where are all the black male therapists? And so, can you speak a little bit about one, the importance of black male therapists, and why specifically as black men, as a black male therapist, your position is important in our community? But why aren't there more black male therapists? Where are they?
Uh, well, I think that it's a complex answer, right? For one, therapy is a female-dominated field. Something like 97% of all therapists are female. And then when you begin to break it down into the reasons why, you have to kind of go back to the history, and it really, really kind of starts the female domination of women in the field kind of starts around World War II. All the men go to war, and it was really like psych nurses specifically, that kind of stepped into this field and were providing emergency medicine, and then they were also integrating psychology into it. And then when the men came back, the women were already into the field, and at that time, for whatever reason, a lot of men in the field were like, oh well, this is women's work, and they kind of moved into psychiatry. Um, and then it kind of continued that, oh, as it became quote unquote women's work, it was something that was viewed as it wasn't quite highly paid, it wasn't quite as prestigious as something like psychiatry. Um, and so what happens is that this gap begins to grow, in that people who have access and means to the field are predominantly white women, because the level of education required to be in the field, as well as the time and money and the effort, as well as just good old fashioned knowledge base. If you don't know it's an opportunity for you, you're not going to do it. I'll be honest, I had no interest in being a therapist or even no knowledge about what it meant to be a therapist until my junior year of college. I was going to go to law school. Um, and it was one psychology course. I took one psychology course, and I had a professor who was attuned to not only me, but everyone in the class. And he kind of became my tutor and my mentor and kind of guided me along the process. And so, just to like have some statistics, when you look at the National Association of Psychologists and as well as the I think it's the National Association of Professional Psychiatrists, um, you'll see that there are a lot more men in the field as psychiatrists. It's on the medical side. And what it,
You mind if I pause you right there? I want to pause you right there for just a second. For
I,
those who are unfamiliar, what's the major difference between a therapist and a psychiatrist?
yeah, so psychiatry is the highest level of professional accreditation in the mental health field. You have to go to medical school, you have to go to residency in order to become a psychiatrist. And that's because psychiatrists are primarily the ones who prescribe medication.
Got it.
Psychologists also have doctorates, but they're usually more based in research. They're usually in academia, and they either run hospitals, but they don't. In some states they can. I want to be very careful and say in some states they can, but mostly they can't. So
Got it.
psychiatry is the medical model of mental health. Psychology is the theory of mental health applied to both academia and the general populace.
Mm,
So you can
okay.
have a psychiatrist who also works as a psychologist. As a psychologist, you cannot claim to be a psychiatrist because you have to go to medical school to become a psychiatrist. Is that clear? I hope that's
That does make sense. Now, I had a conversation with a gentleman that alluded to when it came to barriers to entry, that it seems like psychiatrists have it a little more easy in a sense.
yeah.
Um, do you believe that that may have anything to do with the drug industry lobby behind the scenes, or what do you feel that may be about?
Well, I think psychiatrists, quote unquote, have it easier because they're coming in under that medical license, right?
Okay.
So they have to have the hurdle of getting. First of all, you got to get into med school.
Right.
Then you got to pass med school. Then you got to get into residency. And then you start working. And then some even beyond residency, they go through fellowship, which is like another year or two of schooling.
So,
So when you have all those barriers of like holding people back and you've jumped all those hoops, they've kind of already run the gauntlet to get into the field and into the industry. And
right.
here's the big thing, because they are under that medical model,
Mhm.
right? They are medical doctors. Psychiatrists are medical doctors. Because they're on a medical model, they have, I guess, an easier pathway of making it through the managed care system. And when I say managed care, that's a fancy word for the insurance world.
So let's talk about the insurance world for a second. Most therapists, I'm seeing they want to go private pay because they don't want to deal with the insurance companies.
Mhm,
A lot of people that I talk to and I deal with, a lot of people that watch this show, they need access to care where they know someone that does.
mhm.
Um, Finance is a big barrier.
Yep.
It really is. And so, why don't more therapists accept insurance? Why do they want to go private pay?
Well, I think it's a dual-edged sword. I know plenty of therapists who do accept insurance, and every single therapist I know that accepts insurance is booked out 6 months.
Hmm.
They are booked and busy, and they enjoy it. However, the managed care system can be difficult to manage. It can be arduous. You have to deal with things like insurance claims, and in some cases, I don't know how prevalent this is, but I have heard of cases where people have had they've offered services to a client, they've done everything right, and then the insurance pays them and then decides for whatever reason they're going to do what's called a clawback. So they literally take the money back.
Wow. Now that's the first I've heard of that. That's the first I've heard of that.
Yeah, and a lot
Wow.
of people don't know that. If I've worked in insurance, I sold Medicare, I've sold life insurance, I've sold property and casualty, so home insurance, car insurance, insurance for your pet, for your apartment, for your dog. I've sold all of it. So like when insurance companies do clawbacks, it's rough, right? Especially because most therapists that are in private practice are solopreneurs. They usually work by themselves, for themselves, or they work in small individual groups. It's very rare to see therapists in private practice in quote unquote big business. What most therapists don't get into private practice to be a business owner. What they do is they get into private practice because they want to control their time, they want to control their income, and they want to see specific clients that they want to work with. So, can you imagine if you are someone who um, you go through school, you go get your master's, you've spent 2 3 years getting your master's degree, and let's say $60,000 in debt. You have your first set of clients. You work for 6 months, and then
Right.
when you first get paneled with insurance, it does take a while to get paid. So let's just say a calendar month. Let's say you get started in January. Let's say you work January, February, March, and you don't see a dime of that money
Wow.
until April, May, June, July.
Wow.
So you've worked quote unquote for free for 3 months because you haven't been getting paid, but you have to pay these bills. Like I mean, you have to have office unless you're working out of your home. And even
Hmm.
then, you have to have specific rules. You have to have liability insurance. You have to have an electronic health record system, unless you want to do it by hand.
Right.
There's all these bills you have to pay, and then you're getting paid late on the back end. And then, can you imagine you're still getting paid late? Your money is coming slower than it usually would otherwise. And then, out of nowhere, in November, right before Thanksgiving, you get a letter saying, "We've restructured this. We found these errors. We're going to do a clawback of $5,000." That $5,000 is gone.
No, the clawback, that's the first I've heard of that. I have heard about the long wait times for you all to get paid. Another thing that I've heard in interviewing therapists is that a lot of times they lowball you. So the going rate is between $100 $200 an hour. The insurance companies tend to lowball. Has that been your experience, or are you aware of that?
Yes, I'm very aware of that. So you're exactly right. So the average, if you look at the national average, places like New York and California kind of skew it a little bit. So the national average is about 175. I would say somewhere in the Midwest, you're looking about 130. Most therapists that I know are about 150. A bunch are at 120. A lot of therapists come out of school starting at 100. Um, but it also may depend on where you work. Places in like California, I know people who start at 175. I know people in Texas. I know someone in New York. She started at 200. I was just like, okay, it's different out there. But you got to take into account cost of living, cost of rent. Are you virtual? Are you in person? What certifications you went through? What program you went to? But insurances, for the most part, are going to be significantly lower than that. As of right now, I'm not going to say any names, but I think the highest insurance payer that I know of is, I think, 110.
Hmm.
I think it's about 110 is the highest insurance payers. Some are as low as 90. Some are as low as, I've heard, even as low as 75.
You know, I've heard some that pay intern rates.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Intern rates. An intern is usually 50 bucks.
Hmm.
Yeah. So and again, I don't know specifically what these companies charge, but I know, like, I've heard that, okay, the longer you're paneled with a company, the easier they make it for you to like get paid, the easier they make it for you to keep getting paid, and the easier they make it for you to, like, they may internally raise your individual rate compared to like the general public,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, so it's like this one. I'm beginning to understand that there's there's barriers on both sides. And so for the person who needs help, maybe they have insurance, maybe they don't. There are services like Swope Healthcare, who happens to be one of our sponsors. They have a sliding fee scale. But
Yeah.
if you make a certain amount of income that puts you outside of that scale, you have to pay the full rate. And in this economy, there's just a lot of people that still can't afford it. And so we have barriers when we want help. But what I'm finding out is that the people who are willing to help us, there's a whole different set of barriers that prevent them from doing so.
Yeah, absolutely right. And another, I don't know if any of the therapists or mental health professionals you've worked with have mentioned this. Insurance can deny your claims if they don't like the form of treatment you're providing.
Mm. When you're the professional, you have the knowledge and the education, but they decide if it's sufficient.
Exactly. It's like if you go to the doctor, you have a meeting with the doctor, your doctor you says you've got type 1 diabetes, they want to put you on insulin. And all of
Right.
a sudden you get a letter from the insurance company saying, "Nah, we want you to try metformin first." And you're like, "Huh? Why? I don't have type 2 diabetes." But it's cheaper for them to get you metformin than for them to pay for the insulin. So you might
Mm.
be frustrated. Your doctor might be frustrated. You know, I've heard of doctors making 3, 4, 5, 6 phone calls on one patient just to get them the approved form of therapy that would actually benefit them. And sometimes doctors, just like therapists, we know that, okay, this is annoying. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do it anyway. We know it's not going to work, but we're going to do it anyway. But instead of doing it for 6 months like they'd want you to, we're going to do it for 3 months, show that it's not working, and then appeal.
That's insane. That's insane.
Yeah.
Man, I'm enjoying this conversation because this is exactly why we're having the mental health talk town hall event. We have an opportunity to get in front of one of our senators, state representatives, city council, even a congressman, to start to voice these concerns. And create change. And so I'm going to do a quick commercial break. We've got to shout out a couple of our sponsors, but we'll be right back to this conversation.
Getting your CDL is more than just earning a certificate. It's about creating a balanced life and prioritizing what matters most. At Erie CDL Institute, we understand the importance of mental health, work-life balance, and spending quality time with your family. We're here to guide you into a rewarding career that not only supports your financial goals, but also allows you the flexibility to be there for your loved ones. Let us help you take the wheel of your future, because a fulfilling career starts with a healthy balance.
Hi, my name is A.L. Johnson with Elevating Men. There's a mental health crisis in Kansas City, and on Saturday, September 28th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Mohart Multipurpose Center, we're going to have a mental health town hall. The goal is for us to bring together mental health advocates, professionals, lawmakers, and the general public to address these issues. We need to see you there.
Hi, I'm Kansas City Mayor Quentin Lucas, and right now it's more important than ever to come together and support one another as a community and talk about something that affects each and every one of us, mental health. It's why I'm inviting you to join us for a special mental health town hall on September 28th at 10 a.m. at the Mohart Center. There we'll have mental health professionals, advocates, policymakers discussing topics of stigma surrounding mental health, barriers to access, and we'll work to create an actionable plan to address the mental health crisis in Kansas City. Let's break the stigma and build a healthier and stronger Kansas City together.
And we are back. Thank you all for tuning in. This is A.L. Johnson with Elevating Men. Got a special guest tonight, Caleb Adegoke. And I have a lot of people that say, where are the Black male therapists? And so if you look at the bottom of the screen, his website is scrolling across the bottom. I want you to go ahead and visit, check him out. I know personally, I've been, I think me and this brother go back a couple of years now, actually. He did a group therapy session at the Elevating Men and Oasis Church Men's Conference. It was absolutely amazing. And so if you need his service, visit his website. Again, it's scrolling right there at the bottom of your screen. So today we're talking about barriers to access when it comes to mental health services. We know that mental health is a huge issue. It's a big topic. It's something that's extremely important. And we have a professional here who has really been laying out some of the the walls that have to be climbed on both sides, and so for us who need help, there's certain barriers, but for those who are trying to provide help, there are barriers as well. And so as you saw in the quick commercial clips, we do have a mental health town hall that's going to be talking about and addressing a lot of those issues. I do have to do a quick shout out to our sponsors. We have Aries Trucking, Resolve Counseling, Reach Healthcare, Swope Health, the City of Kansas City, Missouri, Health Forward Foundation, Williams Financial Group, Dreammaker Society, The Restoration, Ad Hoc Group Against Crime, the Center for African American Health, the National Congress of Black Women, and the Oasis Church. And so this is a citywide effort to really improve the landscape of mental health in Kansas City. And so before we went to break, we were talking about the insurance companies. There were a couple of things that you brought up. One, that they delay paying you guys for a very long time. So a lot of when you see a therapist and they say they don't accept insurance, they're not trying to hurt you. They're trying to take care of their families. We talked about the rates that insurance companies pay, which is actually below the national average. And so that's one of the other points of concern. And what I wanted to kind of move into, so when COVID hit, telehealth became a big thing. So I know a lot of therapists are doing, telehealth. And when we talk about Black men and mental health in general, correct me if I'm wrong, but people tend to open up more to someone who they feel may have a shared experience or that they can connect with in some way. Meaning that most Black men would probably or possibly prefer a Black male therapist. Is that correct? Or is that what you've seen in your practice?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing about it is that's not just in therapy. That's in every field, right? Like if you're playing football, you wanna play with the people that look like you. If you want to see a doctor, if you want to see a therapist, like you don't want a water polo doctor treating your football injuries. No offense to the water polo, no
Right,
offense to the water
right.
polo doctor.
Yeah.
If someone was if someone played football and then they went to med school and then it became you know a foot and ankle surgeon, like you would probably feel more comfortable with that person because they have a shared experience. That
Yeah.
keyword right there, that shared experience, what it does is it lowers your defenses, right? You typically go in with lower defenses. Now, as a therapist, we're trained, we go to school and learn how to go into a room with people who don't look like us, who don't believe like us, who don't worship like us, who don't even love people like the way we love people. And then we learn how to sit in that uncomfortable area so that you have an opportunity to learn what a healthy relationship is. I like to describe therapy as a helpful conversation with a safe person. That's all it is.
I love that. I love that. So when we talk about to telehealth, right? One thing that we talked about at the beginning is there aren't a whole lot of Black male therapists to begin with. It's a female dominated industry. And so with telehealth, from my viewpoint, is that opens it up to where, say if I'm a Black man in Kansas City, I can't find any Black male therapists. I can go to some national directory. And if I connect with a therapist that's in Texas or Louisiana, Arkansas, Atlanta, wherever they may be, now I can get the service that I need from someone that I'm comfortable with. Here's my thought and what I've been learning. There's another barrier on your end, which means that you have to license in each state. There may be additional testing. There's these fees that you have to pay. And so most therapists aren't licensed in multiple states. They're only licensed in their state, maybe one adjacent state. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Most therapists are licensed in one, maybe two states. Kansas City is this unique bubble in that, like, Kansas City is right there. From my apartment, if I threw a rock hard enough, I'd hit Kansas, and if I threw a rock hard enough the other way, I hit Western Missouri. So, like, it's that closeness is is a benefit for people like me because I'm getting licensed in both Kansas and Missouri, and most of the therapists in the Kansas City area are. I know people who I went to school with who are excellent therapists that are only getting licensed in either Kansas or Missouri just because of the hurdles you have to jump through. I have to pay, and I'll have a moment of vulnerability and honesty. I have to pay approximately $4,000 a year for supervision, which, while it's necessary to have supervision in order to get my hours so I can be professionally licensed, I have to pay about $4,000 a year for supervision to get licensed in both Kansas and Missouri. And because I'm under supervision, I legally cannot accept insurance. Not that I don't want to. I legally, because I'm in supervision, which is similar to residency like doctors go through, I cannot accept insurance. So that
Wow.
$4,000 I'm paying, that's literally all money coming out of my own pocket.
So let me get this straight. So if you were to license in multiple states, again, we're talking about telehealth and the ability to help people across the board that look like you and can relate to you. Would we be at more than $4,000? Like, is it okay,
If I were to get licensed in just one more state, like the average is about $2,000 to $3,000 for
per
supervision.
state?
Yeah, per state for supervision, right? This is just we're talking supervision. The licensing is a lot less than that. You're probably looking at like 1,500. We're talking about taking state exams. We're talking about filling out forms, doing things of that nature. But because there isn't a national uniformity, there isn't a national database, there isn't a law that says if you are just like if I'm a doctor, right? It doesn't matter where in the country, I'm a doctor regardless, right? Because
Exactly.
they have these national registries. Now, if I move from Kansas to Missouri, I still have to fill out paperwork and do filings that say, okay, you are still a doctor, you still hold a license, and you still meet all the requirements. But the requirements in Kansas, even though from my office in Missouri to my apartment in Kansas is a 22-minute drive without traffic, two completely sets of different rules.
Exactly.
So
Just
you
like
can
you
only imagine what
mentioned.
it is to be in
Mhm.
like New York and all these other states. So yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, like you mentioned, you've been in the insurance business. I'm in the insurance industry. I've been doing that for 15 years. It's easy for us to license in multiple states. Like there's a website we go on, we pay a fee, boom, you're licensed in another state.
Yeah.
Um, for your profession, you're going to administer the same type of services no matter what state you're in. But they create these hurdles and these barriers, which again reduces the amount of people that we can find who look like us that can really give us the care that we need.
Yeah. And again, I think it's honestly at some point, I think it was done out of a sense of wanting to protect people, right? Each state wants to protect their own constituents. And so they make these rules in order to say, okay, in order to practice in this state, you have to have this license, you have to have this many hours. And once you're clinically licensed, let me be fair, once you're clinically licensed, it's pretty easy to, if I move from Kansas to, I have a friend, he moved from Kansas City to Kentucky. All he had to do, because he was already clinically licensed, was do a license transfer. So he had to wait a few weeks and pay a couple $100. Then he moved to a different state. Same thing. He had to wait a few weeks and a couple $100.
But
And then
that's him moving residency. But if he
that's him
wanted
moving
to,
residency. You can't
yeah,
do that because your body, your physical body has to be licensed in the state where your client's physical body is residing. Right.
exactly. Right.
A lot of these rules got relaxed during COVID, like because before COVID hit, if my client was physically in Missouri, I also had to physically be in Missouri. But then with
Mhm.
telehealth, they were like, okay, you can be in Kansas and like can be in Missouri. They relaxed a lot of the rules and they saw that it was a big benefit, which is why places and companies like what do you call them? BetterHelp and some of these other companies, they say, oh, you could change therapists at any time. But what ends up happening is people don't necessarily feel like they're meeting people that kind of they can click with. I think those things are a good first step. But what we
Mhm.
really need, what therapists and counselors really need, is for the federal government. And while I do think that like states should be more actively involved, what we
Mhm.
really need is for the federal government to create some sort of national recognized um I don't call it a registry,
It's kind of like the NAIC for insurance.
exactly, the
Yeah.
NAIC, whatever it is
Yeah.
for doctors, whatever it is for engineers, right? Because like if you like, yeah, there should be some sort of nationally recognized standard that if you as a therapist in your state meet this nationally recognized standard, you can then practice physically or via telehealth anywhere in the country. That would
Mm.
a reduce costs because if someone in Texas doesn't find anyone they like, they can see someone in Ohio or Missouri or Hawaii or wherever the therapists are, which then kind of makes it like, we talk about a free and open market. If you're in California charging $375 and someone in Kansas is offering the same services at the same level, the same quality for $175, the market's going to even itself out.
So,
Also, go ahead.
Oh, no, I apologize. So look, we're at our time. What I want to do is a part 2, because this is something that people need to digest. This is a big reason that we're doing the mental health town hall, because we understand that change, a lot of times we have to get government involved. And so would you be willing to come back for a part 2? Because I want people to digest this in and of itself. If we could do that here in the next couple of days, I would absolutely love it.
Absolutely. Say less. Let's do it.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for tuning in. If you're just now popping into the video, go ahead and catch the replay. You can follow us on YouTube at Elevating Men. You can also go to our Facebook page at Elevating Men. This is Caleb at Agoke. If you do need therapy services, look at the bottom of the screen. His website is scrolling across the bottom. He comes highly recommended from Elevating Men. Brother, we thank you so much for this information. It's very important and useful. We'll do a part 2, so everyone, be looking out for part 2. But thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Pleasure's mine.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.